right, I picked this puzzle from one of my favorite books to give to my students, and that's John Bain's Chess Tactics for Students. And I tell people you're doing this book not to solve the puzzles, because they're pretty easy, but to recognize the puzzles, because that's one of the big problems with intermediate players is they give up on easy tactics books too fast because they can solve all the puzzles, and they figure, well, if I can solve them, then it's too easy for me. But what they don't understand is that you're really trying to do these puzzles to recognize them. You want to do them over and over again, so that when they come up in a game, you don't miss them just because, even though they're easy, if someone waved a big flag and said, white to play and win, then you get them. But if they don't, then you miss them because you don't recognize them. So this is one of those kind of puzzles. This is a puzzle that's actually a pretty easy puzzle, but it's the kind of puzzle that intermediate players miss in games, and especially, of course, lower rated players miss in games, because no one's holding up a big sign saying play and win. If they knew it was play and win, then they would start looking for stuff. And when they don't see play and win, then they look for stuff that's maybe a lot less ambitious. Okay, so, well, white can't just do nothing here. Suppose white plays queen takes b7 and says, aha, that's the answer, I'm winning a pawn. Well, then black's got all kinds of things he can do. He can check, and white can't move the king because he gets checkmated. And if he puts the rook in the way, then maybe black can take and check him a million times. Like rook takes, king takes, queen takes check or something, So white can't just kind of do nothing here. So let's go back to the position. So we're looking, as always, for checks, captures, and threats. Well, let's look at our checks first. Queen to g8 is a check. But in order for that to win, it would have to beat king takes g8 and queen takes g8. And if the question is, if I do that sacrifice, what am I getting for it? Is there any reason to look further? Which is the kind of question you want to ask to avoid quiescence errors. The answer is no. There is nothing to make you look further. Queen to h8 check. Well, now he only has one way to take, which is nice. It's more forcing. But after king takes h8, what did that do? Nothing. Your lone rook isn't capable of doing anything. So let's now look at our captures. Well, we looked at queen takes b7. But our only other capture is queen takes e6. Now, if you're in a game and you look at queen takes e6 and you say, gee, I can't do that, I'm losing a queen for a pawn, then you're making a quiescence error. Because what you want to ask is, if I take that rook and if he takes my queen, which he would have to if he wants to, avoid being down a rook, then is it worth looking any further? And the answer there is yes. Because after queen takes e6, if he plays f takes e6, then f7 threatens to get a queen, or even a knight with a fork. So it's worth investigating. And even if black throws in a check with queen d1 check first, and then king h2, we have the same kind of situation. So therefore, queen e6 becomes the area of attention. So let's look at that. Queen takes e6. So black has two moves. He can check, or he can play pawn takes. Let's look at the pawn takes first, and then we can check to see if the check makes any difference. No pun intended. So here, white's going to play f7. And now white's threatening to get a queen, and black cannot get his queen or his king in front of it. What can black do? Well, he could throw in a check now. And now white has the pleasant choice of playing rook f1, double threatening the queen and getting a promotion. Or I think he can just even play king to h2, and if black plays, let's say, queen here, threatening some more checks, white could probably just get a queen, and now queen g3 check, king g1, and no more checks for black, and he's just losing. Well, what happens if black throws in the check right away at the start? Does that make any difference? Well, yes, if white's makes a mistake and puts the rook in the way, maybe black can just play queen takes, king takes, pawn takes, and now if f7, king g7, and black is going to win this endgame with a couple of extra pawns. But that's because rook f1 is such a bad move. Even though rook f1 threatens the queen, it's much better here to just play king h2. And now this hasn't solved black's problems at all. He has no good check, and he's down a rook, and if he takes the queen after we push the pawn, this transposes into that other line we just looked at. if black plays here, maybe queen e4, with the idea of checking on e5 and then checking back on e1, then white simply gets queen again, and on queen checks, he can play queen f4, and white's winning. So that must be the answer then. The answer is the pseudo-sacrifice, or maybe you like to call it a sham sacrifice. Queen takes e6, pawn takes, pawn up. As I said, this is a very easy puzzle. I expect most of you got this right. The question is, would you have gotten it right in a game as well if this position had come up? Would you have said, oh, wait, maybe I can take that rook. Let's investigate that. And then you would have found out, aha, it all works and I can take that rook and I'm winning. So this is the kind of thing you don't want to miss during a regular game.